You want to get sold on these gimbals? This is the original TX16S. Watch this. I am pushing down on the throttle even though the throttle is all the way down. Look, that's just lowering the throttle, and now I'm pushing on the throttle. Do you see how much flex there is between when the throttle is down and when the throttle is actually squeezed and pressed? And now the TX16S with the new AG01 gimbals. I'm pushing down. Do you see how it doesn't change at all? And you can't feel it, but it's not moving either. It is rock solid. That's an all-metal gimbal, baby. One of the main things that people criticize about these less expensive, less premium radios like this RadioMaster TX16S is the gimbals. They say that the gimbals on a $600, $800, $1,200 Futaba or Spectrum radio have something. They feel better. They're more, I don't know. Because, to be honest with you, I've never been a gimbal snob. I've used high-end radios. The gimbals felt fine. I've used inexpensive radios. The gimbals, maybe they felt a little different, but I didn't feel like they were holding me back. People who are critical of my piloting skills might argue that they're holding me back. Well, today we're going to dive into that whole milieu because this is the RadioMaster AG01, and it is a new all-metal 4-ball bearing high-end gimbal for the RadioMaster TX16S. And these two gimbals together cost almost as much, maybe more, depending on what you paid, as the whole freaking radio itself. So is it worth it? I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. All of the product that you're seeing in this video, both the gimbal and the radio, were sent to me by RadioMaster. I did not purchase it with my own money. I have not received any cash or other compensation in exchange for this video, and no one has had any pre-approval or conditions on the contents of this video before it was released. I'm going to unbox this right here on camera, and you're going to get my very first impression of how the gimbal feels. But even if you, like me, are not a gimbal snob and you're not going to buy into the, oh, it's so buttery smooth and feels amazing, there are a few things about this gimbal that may tempt you to upgrade. It's adjustable from the outside instead of having to open the radio up, and it has some adjustments that the factory gimbals on the RadioMaster don't have. First thing I notice is that click at the end of the movement. So these are 100% metal. They're all metal, every part of it, including this inner part here. And if we look at it from the underside, just everything. Everything is metal. And that, produces these nice tactile clicks, obviously. But having all these metal parts in here is going to produce a more rigid, a stiffer gimbal. Not stiffer in terms of the spring tension, which is totally adjustable, but in terms of how much sort of slop there is as you're moving the stick around, and especially consistency at the extremes of stick movement. In fact, we can test that once we've got the gimbals in the radio. Now, this is a 4-ball bearing gimbal, and that means that on either side of the uppy-downy axis and on either side of the lefty-righty axis, there is a ball bearing. You can just see the silver ball bearing right here. And that's going to give smoother movement and longer service life than another mechanism. Like you might have a metal bushing that's lubricated and is sliding in another metal bushing on a cheaper gimbal, or a metal post riding in a plastic piece on a cheaper gimbal. 4-ball bearing gimbal means you have ball bearings on all the axes. Going to be way better. Another thing that makes these gimbals stand out is that they are almost fully adjustable without ever opening up the radio. So if we look at these screw holes here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's a 5th screw right here on the gimbal. These adjust the spring tension up and down. They adjust whether the throttle centers or not, and they adjust the throw. So you can separately adjust the up and down throw. And the range is 38 to 54 degrees. This is really nice. There are people who are pulling out their throttles on their FreeSky radios. I think it's the M9 gimbal that they're putting in, which is a gimbal with less up and down throw on the throttle. And the idea behind that there is, you see how when I try to go to full throttle, like I can't quite, my thumb is kind of at full extension and there's a little bit more throttle movement to go. And I think this is especially true if you pinch This may be less true if you just use thumbs, that you kind of have to shift your hand a little to get to full throttle. And when I look at like black box logs or stick overlays of my flights, I find that unless I'm just very consciously doing a full throttle punch, I often don't go to full throttle. So some people prefer to adjust the travel of their gimbal so they can get to full throttle within the range of their normal hand motion. The other thing that a short throw throttle gives you is the ability to get to full throttle faster. So if you have to move a shorter distance, you can get there in less time. The downside is that you get less precision. The more throw there is on a gimbal, the more precisely you can move it. It's like sort of built-in rates, physical rates in the gimbal. And the great thing about these AG01 gimbals is that they fully let you adjust the up and down throw, the up and down extension, using these adjustment screws. Now, I would not be a responsible reviewer if I did not tell you that these same adjustments are available in the gimbals in the Eachine TX16S. This radio is manufactured by RadioMaster and then just relabeled by Eachine. And I have also heard some reports that they're putting these same gimbals in the RadioMaster TX16S. Mine doesn't have it, but after the Eachine radio came out, some people have told me that they ordered a RadioMaster TX16S and it came with the same adjustments. Just to be clear, these are not the same gimbals as the AG01. They are not the all-metal 4-ball bearing gimbals that I'm reviewing in this video, but they do have the same adjustment screws and the same adjustments. In case you've never taken this radio apart before, the first thing you do is you just pull off the side plates. They just pull right off, and then you loosen or remove 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, and then you loosen these screws on top, and this part just kind of lifts off. There's wires in there. There's your antenna wire, so don't pull it off. Just kind of lift it gently and set it aside, and then the back of the radio will lift off. And that will lift off and it will not lift off and pull away. That's right. Depending on which radio you've got, there may be a speaker here, and you can unplug that like so. Also, you will of course have removed your battery, or your battery will be in there, and you need to take that out too. Next, we're going to take the gimbal out, and this is a little bit tricky. I have done this before, but I think we're going to start with these screws. 1, 2, 3, and 4 is in there, but hard to get at. I'm not sure if we need to take this pot out first, but let's just start working our way through. Times like this, I'm glad that I'm recording so that if when I screw up, I'll remember what I did. No, I don't feel great about that. So we're going to go ahead and take the potentiometer out by removing this screw. And there's another one right here at the top. And having done that, will it just lift right out? Yes, just 4 screws. Fantastic. Alrighty, and then it looks like it just goes right to here. We'll unplug that, and the gimbal will come away. Now that we've got the original gimbal out, we can take a closer look at how it compares to the AG01 gimbal, and immediately you can just see freaking plastic everywhere. Look at that. Look at that plastic. Ugh. Look how flexy it is. My God. Can you see that? We got plastic here. Everything is just plastic. Yeah, by comparison, like I can try to flex it, but obviously it's freaking aluminum or steel or whatever it is. It's not going anywhere. Now this right here is the cross piece that centers the stick, so it is under spring tension. I've removed the spring in order to get that bearing out, but it's under spring tension, and when you move the stick, it is pressed up by this little pin here, and then the spring pulls it back down and it seats back in. And that is involved in just how well the stick recenters and how it feels, how much slop, if any slop, it has when it is centered. If we compare that to the same piece on the AG01 gimbal, first of all, you can see it is a big, honkin' thick piece of metal, right? And yeah, just really, really nice. Hey there folks, Joshua from the future here. Before you start installing the gimbal in your radio, pay attention. Number one, the gimbals come in a left and a right hand version. The tension bars for the throttle go on the outside, and these mounting holes with the cutout in them go on the inside of the radio. Don't get that backwards. Well, you probably can't mount them backwards, but it would suck to get halfway through and then find out. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you buy the gimbals in a set, one of the gimbals will come spring-loaded and the other one will come not spring-loaded, and that one's intended to be the throttle. You can convert one to the other if you fly mode 3, but they come set up for mode 2 as Jesus intended. So last thing, before you install the gimbals, if you like particularly heavy spring tension, they come with a second set of springs, and you would replace the existing centering springs here and here with those springs if you know that you like heavy spring tension. Next, we're going to take this metal piece out, or if you don't have a TX16S Max, it may not be a metal piece. Making sure not to pinch any wires. We're going to go ahead and install this back in with the original screws. So then we can just flip this over, and you can see it's got a little bit of wiggle room. So let's just sort of wiggle it into place. And we'll tighten these down. Well, you can put an expensive gimbal in a cheap radio, but you still got a plastic faceplate to strip the mounting holes out, I guess. But, you know, these are M2.5 screws, which I'm going to guess that these are the ones I'm using are 10 millimeter. They seem like they might be the right length. Let's see how she could do. There we go. Yeah, M2.5 by 10 millimeter. And they are fine thread. And basically, I've used these in the past. That's why I have them. Because when you strip one of these screws out in the plastic, these are just a little bigger, and they will bite in and hold. All right, so let's not strip those. That's probably me being a freaking gorilla, nevertheless. All right. Once that's tightened down, then we'll move this on over here and plug her back in, right where she was. Technically, this was run underneath this wire. I don't know why it might have been, but they've done it on both sides. They've run it underneath the wire. That's probably to help keep it out of the way, and I'm going to do the same thing when I put it back, just in case there's a good reason for that. Now this gimbal is on my left-hand side, and I fly mode 2 like Jesus intended, and that means it's my throttle. So this is the time where you would adjust the throttle tension, and if you like a ratcheted throttle, this is the time where you would do that. On the back of the gimbal, we have these two pieces of metal. This outside piece has a little notch cut here, and if you add tension to this screw, you can see it adds ratcheting. Don't do that. You don't want ratcheting on a multi-rotor. Well, if you do, you can turn it on. And the more you screw that screw in, the harder the ratchet will be. This little curved piece here is the actual throttle tension, and you need that tight enough that when you release the throttle, it stays in place. It doesn't like flop around, but you can adjust that to be looser or tighter depending on your personal preference. In addition, RadioMaster ships with this damping oil and this lubricating oil, and I'm guessing that's for the throttle, to smooth the throttle out some. Yeah, it's like a thick, they say oil, but it's really more of a grease. It's like a thick, oh, that is thick. That's a thick grease. That ain't going nowhere. We got some of this stuff. Ooh, that's more kind of something about Mary. Gooey. So you can apply a little bit of that to this plastic piece here where it meets this tension piece. And is that plastic piece Teflon? Sometimes they're Teflon to make them go even smoother. I'm not sure about that. That's where you would put that. Oh God. Oh, that thick stuff is so thick. The damping grease is so thick. What am I going to do? I'm going to apply just, we really don't need much of this grease. There we go. Apply just a little bit there. There we go. And then I think I'm going to just remove this excess. because I can see that there's excess. Well, that is nice though. It's got just a little bit of resistance, but it's still ultra smooth. Well, now that I've got the other gimbal in, I can really feel them next to each other. You hear that? That's always bugged me. Oof, that is solid. That is solid. Alrighty, now the other gimbal is in, and just as before, I'm going to run this underneath this wire, just like they had it from the factory. I don't really know why they did it that way, but it seemed intentional. Maybe it wasn't, but you never know. We'll go ahead and plug that back in. And we could reassemble the radio now, but I'm going to go ahead and just check it out, to function check it before I do that, because I don't have to open it up again. So we will go ahead and power up. Great. We're getting a warning, throttle not idle. We'll just skip that. And we're getting a control warning. That's okay, that's normal. As anytime you mess with your gimbals, you should rerun the calibration. You can see they're all over the place. They're not centered. So I'm going to hold down the sys key. I'm going to page to the hardware screen and click calibration, and press enter to start. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to center all of the pots and the sticks, and I'm going to center the 6th position too, although I don't think it matters. And we'll hit enter, and then we will move the sticks and the pots. So we'll move the side sliders up and down. We'll move the pots left and right, and we'll do the 6th position. Look down here. You see it also needs calibration. It acts like a potentiometer internally. So now that's calibrated, and then finally we will move the sticks. Ooh, that is a solid stick feel. Dang. All right, and enter. And now let's go back, and they are well centered. And if we 0%, 0%. And this is with ADC filter turned off. If you want to know more about what ADC filter is and why I have it turned off, then I'll put a link in the video description. You should have this turned off almost certainly. But the ADC filter off means you get a lot more wiggle and jitter. This is what it looked like on my old radio. See how the channels are all kind of jiggling? My sticks are not moving. That's just how the gimbals were. These gimbals go back to 0, baby, and they don't jitter at all. Huh. You like that battery? I'll put a link to that down in the video description as well. That's about the biggest battery you can get in the RadioMaster's battery bay, and it lasts for freaking ever. So that's going to bring us to the end of the video, and as always, the question, should you buy it? And for some people, the answer is a resounding yes. These gimbals are, I think they're $140 for the set, or $80 a piece if you buy them individually. Check the links in the video description to see what the most recent price is, because prices change a lot recently. If you have that amount of money in your FPV budget and you own a RadioMaster TX16S, I think this is a no-brainer upgrade. Even for somebody like me who is not really a gimbal snob, these are just, they're heavier, they're more solid, they're stiffer, they just feel a lot nicer than the, well, I mean, cheaper, more plasticier gimbals that were on there. But is this an absolute must-have essential upgrade? Absolutely not. This radio has been my daily driver ever since I got it, at least a year, maybe more. I'd have to go back and look, and it has been fine. As long as your controller meets a certain minimum standard, you absolutely can do everything you need to do as a pilot with it. You just may have a little bit nicer of a sense. That's the word. I kept thinking of the word aesthetic, and they do look nice, but sensual is the word I was looking for. A nicer sensory experience using a heavier, a nicer, a better made gimbal. Yeah. If you decide that these are for you, there's a link down in the video description, and it is an affiliate link. And what that means is when you make any purchase after clicking that link at the store, I get a small commission. Click the link, fill up your cart, check out, I get a commission. Easy way for you to support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. And I'll put a link to that light strip as well if you're interested in picking that up. Ooh. I mean, I think we can all agree everything is better with more LEDs, right?
Throttle warning.
Thanks for watching. Happy flying.
What are you doing in here? The least you could do is subscribe or join my Patreon or, like, just here's another video I picked out for you. Jeez.